Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at K for Scratch. And today we are talking about the business side of game development, specifically the value of Epic Games. So this is coming up because they are trying to raise more money. And guess what? How much do you think Epic Games is worth today? Like, what do you think the value of one share, if one share actually existed, would be? And the answer is Epic Games is worth $17 billion. There used to be a time where that number, well, it doesn't make any sense to me. I remember when $1 million sounded like a lot. Now it's chump change to these guys. There's so many billionaires out there, it's kind of obnoxious. And frankly, Epic Games are trying to raise more money. Now, they're not trying to raise $17 billion. What they're trying to raise is $750 million, and the amount of shares they're giving away means that that would make the total company worth a total of $17 billion. So they'd be worth $16.3 billion, and then, of course, you throw that $750 million on top, and they're worth over $17 billion in the end. Now, this isn't to say that they're going to get it, but I imagine, honestly, that they will at this point, which would actually make Epic Games currently worth $17 billion. And that sounds absolutely insane until we start seeing some of the money that Epic Games currently make. Now, on the way there, we're also going to see one of the dumbest image captions I've ever seen in my life. So maybe you can explain this one to me when we get to it. So a little bit more here. A couple people have confirmed it. Investor participants in this round include T. Rowe Price Group and Bailey Gifford. Existing investors include KKR & Co. will also participate, and there were some investors in the past that we will get to in the past. Now, this is kind of, again, this is the image in this video that makes me just kind of scratch my head. All right, I get the image. It's from the Unreal 5 engine reveal, but look at this caption. This Lara Croft-like character is not a glimpse at the next Epic Games title. So you could put a picture of an orange and say, this is not a pear. I don't understand. I don't get what this is here. First off, she's nothing to do with Lara Croft. And second, here's a picture of not Epic Games stuff. Okay, Taption. Anyways, I'm going off topic there. It just struck me as a funny thing. So anyways, they reported $4.2 billion in revenue last year and $730 million in earnings. So they're profitable almost to the $750 million already. So they profited by the amount that they're basically trying to sell a stake in. So what do they need another basically $1 billion for? I don't actually know. So revenue for 2020 is forecasted to be $5 billion. And this next number is going to blow your mind. Thanks to the COVID locking us all at home, Fortnite made $400 million in April. In April alone. That is nuts. So obviously they're still making mad cake off of that whole Fortnite money. Unreal Engine obviously is making them decent money too. They don't have to split these numbers out though, because they're not a publicly traded company. They did better in 2018 than in 2019. In 2018, they made $5.6 billion, but they also did a lot of investments in between. They invested in the Epic Games Store. They launched the $100 million mega fund. They've bought a number of companies, including Quixel. We'll see some of the companies they've bought in a bit. So to this date, they have raised a total of $1.6 billion. And of course, in 2018, they made 1.25, and that was Tencent buying 40% of the company back in 2020, and 2012, and they still remain a shareholder. So if you're ever wondering, why do companies invest in non-publicly traded companies? Well, this is a good example. That Tencent stake at 40%, is worth, I think it cost them, well, we'll go on to an article that describes that. Now, I know that's kind of contentious, and the key thing here is Tencent doesn't own a majority stake. They're a silent partner, so that they don't supposedly have any say over how things are going to work and progress. But you can see here, Tencent bought a 40% stake in Epic valued at $825 million pre-Fortnite launch. So that 40% now, if you look at $17 billion, is worth about, say, $9 billion if they get this valuation. So suddenly that $825 million investment, basically getting a 10-to-1 return, doesn't look so bad. And that's what people are going to have to be wondering now. If they're going to invest in something currently worth $17 billion, they're obviously thinking that Unreal is going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And given the fact that Unreal is, being used more often in films, in real-time TV production, in addition to games, and the gaming market keeps growing, and their Epic Store keeps growing, and everything else, I think that might actually be a safe bet. Unreal or Epic Games may actually be worth $17 billion. Now, there's another player in this whole game as well, and that is Unity. And we've seen it recently with Unity. They've been kind of more, I don't want to say greedy, but money focused. At the beginning of the year, they increased their subscription numbers. At the last like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, they released Mars, an AR add-on that is an on-top subscription. You can see where they're definitely trying to get more revenue sources, and this seems to be around the idea that Unity is trying to go public. Now, Epic Games, with this valuation, they're still not going to be a publicly traded company. They'll still be private. They're taking on private investors. When you go public, you go on the stock exchange, and then people like you or I can buy shares in the company. And that money then raised from selling shares goes back to pay off the investors in the company and goes into Unity itself. So as you can see, Unity is actually currently funded. Go away, ad. Go away, ad. All right, here we go. It's currently funded at $6.3 billion due to previous investors. And it was argued that when John Riccitelli, I probably screwed the name up, the guy from EA that everybody just loves so much, came on as CEO, they figured his ultimate job was to bring the company public. And that's kind of the payday at the end of the road. And when you are public, you're beholden to shareholders. And that suddenly means that you have to keep raising money. You have to keep making more money. Your decisions become more money focused than they do become technology and growth focused, and they can be a very bad thing. So that's one thing to definitely keep an eye on, but it does seem that Unity is moving towards that whole public offering. Now, if you're interested in a little bit of the financial background of either company, an interesting site to check them on is Crunchbase. And here you can see some of the details about Epic Games, who the main owners are, how many people are employed there, and then where you kind of get really interesting is some of the people that have invested. So there's been 6 rounds of funding already at Epic Games, all private at this point in time, for a total, again, funding of $1.6 billion. So this move would raise another, I guess that would be $0.8 billion, but each time there's a new round of this capital, it's to raise the overall value of the entity. So you're basically selling a stake as if the entire whole was worth X amount of money. And each time, that's going to be bigger and bigger, and your earlier investors have more and more opportunity to actually make some of their money back. So you can see some of the details about people that have invested in them in the past. Obviously, the big one and the one people don't really like to hear too much about are Tencent. But frankly, Tencent own a stake in pretty much every single large game developer in the Western world, period. So it's hard to get away from that. Now, the key thing here is they're still a minority stake, and if they ever sold a majority stake to Tencent, that's when things start getting scary. Now, you see here with Unity has also done a number of previous investments. You can see here their funding they show as $1.3 billion. That is currently on an evaluation of a total of $6 billion. So if it stays the same, basically they're going to be saying that Unreal Engine is worth 2 to 3 times more than what Unity is. But then when Unity does their IPO, they're going to be doing it on a higher valuation. So it's going to be interesting to see which of the two companies ultimately ends up being higher up on the list in terms of total value. So if you're wondering basically who some of these companies have acquired to, you see in the case of Unity, it's been more, Pro Tools was one of the ones that most directly affected us, but it's been more on the lines of networking companies there. Artomatics was one of the recent investments that's AI-driven texture creation. It can be an interesting thing, but I haven't actually seen anything out of that. And if we head back over to, this went the wrong way. If we head back over to Epic Games, you can see the people they've acquired recently. You've got things like Quixel, Twin Motion, and those have both been just straight out released as part of Unreal since that. It's pretty amazing. They bought House Party, which actually I think is doing really well since it started off early kind of poor, but I think House Party actually really benefited from the COVID thing again. It's weird how much Epic Games actually benefited from the COVID lockdown, but they really seem to have. So both companies are really similar in their funding, in what they do, and in where they're going. So again, it'd be really interesting to see where things end up. But again, the key difference is Unity's payday is ultimately going to be an IPO, and that kind of changes the dynamic of way the company works from that point on. And I do think there are good reasons to be afraid of an IPO. Whereas with what Unreal Engine are doing here, this raising of another $750 million, I have no idea what it's for, but it's shown in the past that Epic Games have never had any fear of losing money for the future. I imagine they're losing money hand over fist for the Epic Games by giving away all these games on a monthly basis. They may be losing money right now on Unreal Engine. It's hard to say. I doubt it, but it's possible. And that's a view they will take. They will spend money to ultimately grow and make money. That's why we've seen things like Quixel, and then they went ahead and basically gave everything away. So it'll be very interesting to see where that $750 million is ultimately used. But given the way that they have operated recently, I think it's only going to work out well for game developers in the end. But that's where I'm going to leave things. I'm curious again to you. Do you think that Epic Games is worth $17 billion. Do you even understand what $1 billion is anymore? I don't know that we do anymore. You know, you hear on the news that we lost $20 billion BP oil spill is going to cost them $80 billion. It's like, how is that even a number? But yeah, that's what it is, $17 billion. Also, who do you think is ultimately more valuable, Unity or Epic Games? Interesting to hear about that. Comments down below, and I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.